All right, so today I'm gonna teach you how to live. Wait. No, I'm gonna explain NFTs. And this is the video that I wish I would have had. And the goal with this video, or my goal with this video, is to take this quite complex topic and break it down in a way where anyone could understand it. So that by the end of the video, you will not only understand what an NFT is, but you'll also understand how it works, how it's created, why it exists, how it's related to the blockchain, and what the blockchain even is. So the idea is essentially to take all of these things and do it in one video, which is quite ambitious, but I've put a lot of effort into building and structuring this video up in a way where each section should build on itself, so that by the end of it, you'll have a really good and quite in-depth understanding of how all of this works. And the idea is that by the end of the video, you will understand it well enough to actually be able to explain it to someone else. And there will be timestamps in the description in case you want to skip to a specific section that you feel you want to learn more about. But I highly recommend watching the video in the way that it's laid out, because that is the way that I believe you will get the most out of this video. But now let's go. All right, so the first thing that we need to understand is encryption, because that is like the biggest thing that's part of all of these things like NFTs, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, etc. And so what is encryption and how does it actually work? I'm gonna start super general and then I'm gonna go more and more specific as we go along. And if you follow along from the start, then I hope to take you from a crazy simplified version or explanation to being able to understand a really technical explanation of this. So an encryption algorithm can be thought of as a fridge, and stay with me here. Let's say that our fridge is set to 5 degrees Celsius, which to our Fahrenheit friends is the temperature of your normal fridge. If we put something into the fridge, then that thing will slowly get cooled down until it is the same temperature as the fridge, 5 degrees in this case. Depending on what we put into the fridge, different things will happen. If I put in a glass of water, it will get cold, but it will still look like water. If I put in something like coconut oil that might be a liquid outside of the fridge, then as the coconut oil cools down, it will turn solid. The fridge didn't do anything different, it just cooled everything down to 5 degrees. But depending on what we put into the fridge, different things come out of the fridge when we open it. We could actually say that the fridge's encryption algorithm is to turn whatever gets put into it to 5 degrees. And so depending on the temperature of the item that goes into the fridge would actually need to do different things. So if the item is colder than 5 degrees, then the fridge will actually need to heat that thing up to 5 degrees. And if the item is hotter than 5 degrees, it will need to cool it down to 5 degrees. And depending on what type of item we put in, it will actually react differently to turning into 5 degrees, like the coconut oil versus the water. And that is what encryption actually is at a high level. It basically takes some sort of input and then it does something to that, and then we get some sort of output that's changed the input. So for the fridge, that was to turn everything to 5 degrees. But it will always do the same thing. So if we put the same thing in, it will always come out looking the same way. If we put in water, it always came out 5 degrees and it still looked like water. If we put in coconut oil, it came out solid, but it also turned to 5 degrees. So let's say that we built our own imaginary encryption algorithm. The fridge's encryption was to turn things to 5 degrees. Let's say that our imaginary encryption algorithm just adds 1 to all the numbers that gets put in. If we put in 1, we get out a 2, because our encryption sees the 1 and then adds a 1. If we put in 3, we get out a 4. Whatever number we put into the encryption, it will always add 1 to that number. Put in 10 and we get out 11. Now we're actually very close to how encryption algorithms work in the real world. So let's say that you wanted to store your PIN code somewhere, but you didn't want anyone else to be able to use it. What you could do is you could come up with your own encryption algorithm that only you know the rules for. So let's say that we come up with an encryption that always divides everything that gets put into it by 2. And that is what we use to encrypt our PIN code so that no one else can use it. Let's say that our PIN code is 4 2s for simplicity's sake. Then instead of writing down the 4 2s in your notes on your phone, You can use your own encryption that divides everything by 2 and then write down the output of that encryption. So what you would do is you would take your actual PIN code, which is 4 2s, and then just divide that number by 2, and then we get 4 1s instead. Then you simply write down 4 1s, and no one will be able to unlock your phone. So that's how encryption works. But if we think about our own encryption algorithm that we created, it isn't super safe because all it does is basically divide the input by 2. And so it's not super difficult for someone else to figure out that all they need to do to crack our passwords or our PIN codes is to multiply the code by 2, and then they have our passcode. So in reality, encryption algorithms actually get super complex, and what gets complex is what the algorithm does to the input. So what we could do is we could do an example of this. We could take our encryption algorithm, which basically now just divides whatever input we give it by 2, but we could make it a little bit safer by just adding another rule to this. So let's say that we say that it will always divide it by 2, but then it will also add 4 to the total number that we get. Now we have a slightly more safe encryption. So real encryption algorithms are so close to being impossible to crack that we may as well just call them impossible to crack, because not only does it do what I previously described, but it also does different things to different numbers. So if we put in a 1, it will do a different thing than it will do to a 2. And it will do that to all different numbers. And it gets even more complex than this because it will actually do different things to the same number depending on where it appears. If we have 4 numbers that we put in, then if the 1 appears here, then it will do something. If the 1 appears here, it will do something else. If the 1 appears here, it will do something else. So it gets super complex. But the important thing to understand is that if I put the same thing in 2 times in a row, I will get the same exact output every single time. So if we go back to our simple encryption algorithm that only divides by 2, the idea is that if I put in 4, I will always get the output 2. The result of the encryption will always be 2 if I put in 4. This means that if we have the result of the encryption, then we can know if someone actually knows the original input or if they're lying. So if Joe says that he knows that the original input was 3, then we can simply test whether he's lying or telling the truth. We know that the result of the encryption is 2, and he says that the input was 3. So if we test that and put 3 into our algorithm that divides everything by 2, then the result of our encryption is actually 1.5, which is not 2. So Joe is lying, he does not know what was put into the algorithm. So if you imagine that what gets put into the encryption algorithm is actually your personal identification number, then we can actually figure out whether you are part of that encryption or not by simply just entering your personal identification number into the encryption algorithm and seeing if the result matches the result that we got from the previous encryption. And if it does, we know that you were part of it. All right, so now I hope that you have a pretty decent understanding of how encryptions work. So now let's get into what a token is and how a token works. So NFT stands for non-fungible token, and the non-fungible part of that sentence is essentially, non-fungible means that it's not interchangeable. And the best analogy or explanation of this that I found was that you can think of non-fungible items as like a car. So if I borrow your car and then I go away, I drive it, and then I come back and I give you back a different car, you will not be super happy. You will want the car that you borrowed or that you lent to me. You will not want a different car because one car is not interchangeable for another. So that's kind of how that works. And on the opposite side, so something that is fungible is something that is interchangeable. So if you instead borrowed or lent me, $10, then I'm guessing that you won't really mind if I give you another $10 bill back because money is kind of interchangeable. I could also give you coins that equal $10. So it doesn't have to be the exact same $10 bill. You just care about getting $10 in whatever way you can get it. I won't spend too much more time explaining this particular term since I will actually go through how it works in this video. So by the end, I think you will understand it. But the token part is important and it's connected to encryption that I've now explained to you. So a token is a word for the output of an encryption. So if we put in the 4 2s into our divide by 2 encryption algorithm that we made up earlier, then we get out 4 1s, and that is now our token. So the 4 1s represents our token. The token basically represents the result of the encryption. And the result of the encryption basically represents what was used to generate it. The token 1111 in this case represents what we put into our encryption algorithm, which was 2222 or 4 2s. Alright, so I put a lot of thought and effort into selecting each specific sponsor that I want to have on this channel because I want to find the ones that I think will be the most useful for you guys. And today's video sponsor, Omaze, is a perfect example of that. Omaze is right now doing something great in 2 ways. They're running a fundraiser for the charity Gamers Outreach, where you can win $20,000 to level up your home PC and treat yourself to top-of-the-line gear from monitors, processors, and headsets to graphic cards and all the RAM you can imagine. Whether it's for gaming, graphic design, or working from home, the PC of your dreams just became a reality. And I mean, this is pretty crazy because I almost don't even know what I would do with $20,000. There are just so many possibilities, and even building a crazy fully maxed out PC would almost not even make a dent in the $20,000. And Omaze is doing this to raise money for the charity Gamers Outreach, which provides recreation to children in hospitals through the power of video games and the gaming community. Hospitalization can often be a lonely, isolating, and scary experience for young people, and Gamers Outreach brings joy with their well-known medical-grade gaming kiosk called the Gamers Outreach Cart, or Go-Kart for short. So your donation can help ease the burdens of hospitalization by providing equipment, technology, and software that help these kids cope with long-term treatment. And by entering, you also have the chance to win these $20,000 and also to support the Gamers Outreach at the same time, which I think is a great cause, and I think that's just a really nice win-win for everyone. So for a chance to win, just go to omaze.com/cal and donate $10 to this great cause and have a chance to win. So again, that's omaze.com/cal. There will be a link in the description. Like I explained in the encryption part of this video, the output of an encryption algorithm, or the token, is what can be used to double check the validity of the input. So if I say that I produced this token, then we can just double check that by asking me to give you whatever it was I put into the encryption algorithm. And if you put the same things in and get the same token out, then we know that I'm telling the truth. So now the question comes, which is, if 2 people know the input to the encryption algorithm to produce a specific token, then how do we know who actually created it? This is a really good question, and part of the answer to that is that one of the things that gets put into an encryption of an NFT is actually a sort of ID of the person that creates it. So if I say that I generated this token, but I have to put in your ID to be able to actually generate the token, then we know that I didn't actually create it, but you did. But there's still a bit of a problem, and that is, what if both of us create the token? Then who's to say that mine is the real one and yours is the fake one? That's where the blockchain comes in. The one-sentence explanation of the blockchain is that it's a chain of blocks. But the next question that comes up is, what is a block? The one-sentence explanation for that is that a block is a token. Okay, so now we get to the part where I really think that my quite long-winded explanation of how encryption works will really be paying off. So if you skipped past that part and you skipped ahead to this part, and I lose you in the next part, then please go back and watch that, as I believe it will really help. Okay, so now you understand that a blockchain is a chain of blocks, and a block on the blockchain is a token. And a token is essentially just the result of an encryption algorithm, and an encryption algorithm can take some sort of input and do something to that to produce a result or a token or a block. They're all the same. But there's something I'm skipping past here, and that is the chain part. Like, how is it a chain? And I'm really excited now, and to be honest, a little bit proud of myself, because this is where I think that all of my previous explanations will really be paying off. And I put a lot of thought into making it all tie together nicely right here. So as I've explained, we use encryption to create tokens. And encryption algorithms can actually take multiple different inputs before doing the encryption. So we could put in things like my ID, my friend's ID, my name, my height, my weight, my phone number, my credit card info, my login details to OnlyFans. But the point is that you can put in lots of different things, and you wouldn't put in literally the things that I said that you put in, but it's sort of those sort of things. And the idea is that you can put in lots of different things, even previous tokens. To create a chain of some kind, we need to link things together in some sort of way, right? So to create a chain of tokens or a blockchain, we need to link these tokens together in some sort of way. And the way that we do that is that in the creation of each token, we also put in the previous token. So let's say that what gets put into each token is always the previous token along with the ID of the person who wants to create the token. And now let's say that I'm the only person on this blockchain who's creating new blocks or tokens. Then it would look something like this. Our encryption algorithm in this case always just sums up all the inputs, let's say. Super basic. If I put in a 1 and a 1, it will add those two together and give the result 2, or the token 2, or the block 2. Okay, so now let's look at how we create a blockchain with this encryption algorithm. We know that we always put in an ID and a previous token. Let's say that my ID is 1, and let's say that we're creating a completely new blockchain from scratch. In this case, there's no prior token to use for our encryption algorithm. So what we can do in this case is that we can set our very first token to be 0, just to represent that it's the first one. If we put that into our encryption algorithm, it will add my ID plus the previous token, which in this case is the very first token, which means that it will add 1 plus 0, which is 1. So our first token or block on the blockchain is 1. So now our first token or block is linked to our second token or block. Because we know my ID, we can actually test this. So if we wanted to validate that our latest token is actually supposed to be there, then we can just put in my ID and the first token on the blockchain. If the result is the same as this newest token, then we know that it's correct. And once we get to 100 blocks on this blockchain, we can just backtrack just as easily by always just combining the inputs from the prior blocks with the ID of the creator of that block. And then we can go all the way back to the very first block or token on the blockchain. I keep saying block or token, but that is just to really hammer down and make you understand that they're virtually the same thing and they're kind of interchangeable. So now we get back to the problem that I presented earlier, which is what if two people create a token from the same previous token? Which one is the right one? And the main way that this gets solved in blockchain land is to essentially wait for more blocks to get created. So at the point when 2 blocks get created at the same time from the same previous token, then we essentially wait for the next block to get created, and we see on which 2 of those blocks it gets created on. And you can think of this like when the 2 get created at the same time, we essentially start 2 new separate chains. And then we wait to see which chain gets the longest, and then we link the longest chain to the original blockchain that we started with. And then the chain that's shorter will get discarded. And there's a lot more complexity to this, and I don't think that it's super necessary for this particular video, so we're just gonna leave it at that. So now we finally get to NFTs, and mind you that the previous part of this video is how NFTs actually work. But now we're going to take that and we're going to take what I've explained and show you how that works in practice with NFTs. So the first question here is, how is an NFT actually created? And the 1-sentence explanation here is that an NFT is a token that was created with a digital asset. We know how tokens get created now, right? A token is the result of an encryption algorithm, and we can put lots of stuff into an encryption algorithm. We can actually also put in things like URLs into an encryption, and this is where NFTs come in. So the way that essentially works is that you can I create a digital asset of some kind, and then I put that somewhere on the internet. Essentially, I host it somewhere. So an example of this would be this YouTube video that you're watching. I've created it and it is hosted on YouTube, and there's a URL where you can go and you can watch this video. Another example of that would be if you upload a photo to Google Drive, that will be also a digital asset that's hosted somewhere. Your photo is on Google Drive and there's a link to that photo. So to create an NFT, we really just need to create a token, and it's created in almost the same way as always. But now we add in a digital asset in the creation, as well as the ID of the previous token and all of the other stuff that we always put in. And out comes a token referred to as an NFT. But it works just like a regular token or block, and it sits on the regular blockchain. A problem here is that what if I created an NFT of this YouTube video and then I sold it to you for millions of dollars, because that's what it's worth, of course. And then after you've bought it, I decide I'm gonna remove the video. So I take it down. The way to come around this could potentially be to have an official place where all NFTs are hosted, a decentralized network of hosting. Think BitTorrent. When you download something from BitTorrent, you're depending on the individuals who are running their computers and seeding the asset that you want to download. If no one is seeding it at the moment, then you can't download it. That is also essentially how decentralized hosting would work, and is very similar to how the blockchain operates today. So now we understand how to create an NFT and how the processes behind it actually work. But now, why would anyone want to buy it? And couldn't I just copy paste the same thing that you just bought and use it in the same way? And this is where we get to the more philosophical part of this, which is, imagine that I built a PS5 myself from scratch using other parts than the actual official PS5 parts. I built it, I have it right here. It looks exactly like the PS5. It works exactly like the PS5. There's no noticeable difference between this and a PS5. No one could tell the difference. And I tell you that I want to sell you that for $100 less than the actual PS5 that Sony creates. Now, if you bought that from me, would you feel as satisfied with your purchase as if you bought the official Sony PS5? The answer to this question varies a ton, and it depends on a lot of different things. And I think that to some people who hear this, they will go like, what? That's not even a question. Of course, I would like save $100 to get the exact same thing as a PS5. And even though it's not like quote unquote the real thing. But I also think that whichever side you belong to, I think that most of us can actually relate a little bit at least to the feeling of knowing that it's not the real thing. I think that this is super interesting because even if there is no actual difference between two things, we seem to, for some unknown reason, experience this sort of sensation. And right now that is the case for NFTs. Via the blockchain, we can prove that you own that specific copy of that specific image hosted on that specific site. And that's pretty much it. It's basically a receipt that you can show people, or that people can look up should they care, that shows or that says that you own that thing. So for the red pixel that was sold for close to $1 million, you can actually create a red pixel in Paint if you want. And the person who bought that red pixel as an NFT does not own your red pixel. And you can actually download his red pixel and you can use that however you want. But the version of that red pixel that is hosted on that particular site is owned by whoever bought it. And it can be proven by checking the blockchain. Your red pixel that you create in Paint will have the exact same features as the one that this person bought. You can use it in the exact same way. You can use it completely free. You can even copy that person's exact red pixel and still use it completely free. But if anyone cares, that pixel in that particular spot on the internet is owned by that person. We can think of this as an Instagram account, for instance. If you find an account that says that it's The Rock's Instagram account, and it has all the same photos that he has posted to the minute that he's posted them, with the exact same captions, but it doesn't have the blue verification tick next to his name, why would you not follow this account instead of his real one? You will get the exact same experience as if you followed his real one, It's just that he doesn't own this account. These two things seem to be interchangeable, and rationally they should be interchangeable. If all the stories, IGTV and images, etc. get posted and you get the exact same experience, then why aren't they interchangeable? So the answer to why would anyone want to buy an NFT is that most people probably won't, and you probably won't, just like you probably don't care too much if you have an original Leonardo da Vinci painting hanging on your wall versus having a printed copy of that painting hanging on your wall. You probably don't care that much. But just as you don't care that much, there are people that actually do care a lot about having that original Leonardo da Vinci painting. And to them, they wouldn't feel satisfied having just a printed copy of that painting. On the flip side of that though, why would anyone want to sell an NFT? And the answer to that is quite simple: to get rich. Okay, so that may seem kind of funny, and it's meant to be slightly funny, but it's actually not so far from the truth. Because right now, truth be told, it seems like there's some probability that you can get rich if you create a dank meme and sell it as an NFT. Although that chance is probably getting smaller by the second, since this is a bandwagon that a lot of people are jumping on right now. The other part of that, and the more reasonable part of it, is royalties. And this is what I believe has the potential to actually create an entirely new economy for creators. The idea is that if I'm a creator and I want to make some money off of the content that I create, then I can make my content into an NFT and then try to sell it. Maybe someone out there likes what I do and feels like they want to support me, so they buy my NFT to show their support. And don't worry, because this is not a build up to me having created an NFT for you to buy. Think music artists that used to get money from selling their records that now only get small commissions from Spotify per listen. I know that I've bought songs or records from artists sometimes just to support the artists that I like, even though I could download it for free somewhere. And not everyone wants to do that, nor everyone can afford to do that. And there's no pressure to do it, but some people want to do this to show support. So creators can then start to sell part of their ownership of their content as NFTs and start to potentially make some extra money just from that. But here's where it gets really interesting. There's something called royalties, which is a feature that has been implemented and is being improved as we speak. The idea behind this is that if I create an NFT and I sell it, then I can set as part of the sale of this NFT that I will get 5% royalties for all the future sales of this NFT. Meaning that if you buy this from me for $10 and then sell it to someone else for $100, I will get 5% of that sale. So $5 will go to me and $95 will go to you. The only person who can get these royalties is the creator of the NFT. And this would keep going forever. So the more my NFT is being traded, the more royalties I earn. This means that creators will be able to take part in the increase or decrease of the value of their creations over time. And that's a really nice concept, I think. And I also think that it's a really powerful concept. So all of these things might seem a little bit abstract, but the idea is essentially just that. It's an idea that is accepted and validated by the dollar value that is placed in it. So now we're going to get really meta, but money is essentially just an idea that we place a value in. So the idea of money only holds up because enough people believe in the value that we place on it. I don't have to believe in the idea of money. I can choose to stop believing in it. But if I go down to the local grocery store and I want to get a carton of milk, then I need to believe in the idea of money because the store owner believes in the idea of money. And so if I don't believe it, then I won't be able to get that milk because he wants the money that I would trade for it. If enough people believe that these green pieces of paper actually can be traded for things, then these green pieces of paper become valuable proportional to how many or how much of something that you can trade for it. And the same exact thing goes for NFTs. So if enough people believe that there is value in knowing who owns something digital, then that becomes true. Money is really just a norm or something that we believe in. In reality, this is a fairly useless piece of paper, but I'm able to trade this useless piece of paper with you for food, which is quite crazy when you think about it. You give me food that can sustain me and that I need in order to survive, and in turn, you're left with a piece of paper. The only reason this works is because you believe in the idea of this useless piece of paper, and you trust in the idea so much that you're willing to trade actual food for this piece of paper. Because you believe that you can use this piece of paper to trade for something else that you need or want. It's essentially the strongest social contract that we have with each other, and we trust everyone to keep believing in the myth of money. So this is a form of social contract that is super powerful. And the reason that it's powerful is because of the fact that it gets more powerful the more people that believe in it. And the reason that it gets more powerful the more people that believe in it is because of the fact that the more people that believe in it, the more people have invested in it, and the more people have to lose from this thing not working out, essentially. So I think that this is something that is happening or going to happen with cryptocurrencies, for instance, and has already happened to a certain extent. But once you reach a certain point of critical mass adoption, where more people believe in the idea and are invested in the idea than are not invested in the idea and that do not believe in the idea, when you get to that point, it becomes very difficult to then start to backtrack from that, because if I as a person have my savings, in the regular case, you just save money in a bank account, but then you might want to start to invest in stocks or something, and then you start investing in cryptocurrencies, and then you start investing in NFTs. And if I have a significant amount of my savings invested in NFTs, for instance, then I'm going to be very opposed to an idea of NFTs being devalued, because if NFTs become valued zero, then I will lose a portion of my savings. And so that's why it kind of becomes more and more powerful the more people that believe in it, because the more people that believe in it, the more people have something here to lose if the value of it goes to zero. So also that means that the more people that have something invested in it, the more I will be inclined to actually try to affect the world to the point where you can trade these things that I have invested, or to the point where these things that I have invested here get more valued. I don't know if this makes total sense, but I think that that's kind of the case for cryptocurrencies at least. And right now for NFTs, I think that is just kind of a new way of collecting art. So it's not going to be something that everyone's going to adopt in the future. It's not going to be like I believe cryptocurrencies is going to be, but I think that it's going to be a new form of digital art that people are going to be investing in. And it's something that some people will do and some people won't. But unlike regular art, it has the potential of the royalties, which I think will have or could have a really good impact for artists and for creators of different kinds. And so yeah, I hope that you got something out of it, and I hope that I achieved my goal of explaining these things in a way that you were able to understand it. I haven't heard anyone else explain these things in this way, and to me, when I've tried to look these things up, people always explain the things in the exact same way, it seems like. So I hope that my quite different explanation was good and that you understood it from that. And yeah, if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe, and I hope I'll see you in the next one.